Saturday morning arrived with a kind of pristine clarity that made suburban lawns look like movie sets. Marcus stood at his kitchen window at 6:30 a.m., sipping coffee and watching Karen Martinez pace her front yard like a caged animal. She'd been out there since dawn, clutching her phone and gesturing wildly at anyone who would listen. His own phone had been buzzing nonstop since 5 a.m. Text messages, calls, even a few emails forwarded from neighbors who'd gotten wind of what was about to happen. "Marcus, this is insane. You're going to destroy property values." Helen, from 2 streets over. "Dude, Karen's been calling everyone trying to get them to sign some petition. She's losing it." Jim, from next door. "Dr. Johnson, my mom wants to know if she can bring her church group to help supervise the kids." Text from Maya's friend Jessica. But the message that made Marcus grin was from Roberto. "First bus leaves at 9 a.m. We've got 47 kids confirmed, plus volunteers. The local news wants to do a story about community partnership. This is beautiful, man." Maya thundered down the stairs, her arms full of pool floats and towels. At 15, she'd inherited her mother's fierce sense of justice, and the idea of turning Karen's complaints into a community celebration had lit her up like a Christmas tree. "Dad, I invited my whole class, and Jessica's inviting hers. And Tommy from down the street is bringing his cousins from the city." She paused, suddenly uncertain. "That's okay, right? I mean, we're really doing this." Marcus set down his coffee and pulled his daughter into a hug. "Maya, your mom always said that the best way to fight small-mindedness is with big-heartedness. I think she'd love this." Through the window, they watched Karen march across the street toward Jim's house, her folder of complaints clutched in her white-knuckled grip. "She's trying to get people to stop us," Maya observed. "She can try." At 8:45 a.m., Marcus heard the rumble of diesel engines. He stepped onto his front porch and felt his chest swell with something he hadn't experienced in months. Pure, unadulterated joy. 3 yellow charter buses rounded the corner of Willowbrook Circle, followed by a convoy of cars, minivans, and pickup trucks. The lead bus had a banner draped across its side, Community Recreation Initiative bringing neighborhoods together. The quiet suburban street erupted into controlled chaos. Kids poured off the buses, their excited voices echoing off the manicured lawns like a symphony of summer. They ranged in age from about 6 to 16, carrying backpacks and pool gear, their faces bright with a kind of anticipation that only comes from an unexpected adventure. Roberto jumped down from the first bus, his weathered face split by a massive grin. A former Navy medic turned community organizer, he'd spent the last decade connecting resource-rich neighborhoods with families who needed support. Roberto strode across the lawn, his arms spread wide. "Brother, this is incredible. You should see these kids. They've been talking about nothing else for 3 days." Behind Roberto came a stream of adult volunteers, teachers, parents, college students, and several other medical professionals Marcus recognized from the hospital. Someone had brought a professional-grade sound system. Another volunteer was setting up a registration table on Marcus's front lawn. "Dr. Johnson," a young voice called out. Marcus turned to see a girl about Maya's age running toward him, her dark hair in braids, her eyes shining with excitement. "I'm Sophia Roberto. Told us about your pool. Is it really Olympic-sized?" "Not quite Olympic-sized," Marcus laughed, "but it's pretty big. Are you ready to have some fun?"
"Yes, sir."
Sophia's enthusiasm was infectious. Behind her, a group of kids had already started an impromptu game of tag on the front lawn. That's when Marcus noticed the news van pulling up. Channel 7's Weekend. Reporter, a young woman named Cristina Valdez, stepped out with a cameraman in tow. She spotted Marcus and approached with the purposeful stride of someone who'd found a good story. "Dr. Johnson, I'm Cristina Valdez from Channel 7. We heard about your community pool initiative. Would you be willing to do a quick interview about what inspired this?" Before Marcus could answer, a commotion erupted from across the street. Karen Martinez had emerged from her house like a general leading troops into battle, flanked by 3 other neighbors Marcus vaguely recognized. She marched directly toward the news crew, her folder of complaints held high. "Excuse me," Karen's voice cut through the happy chaos like a rusty blade. "I need to speak with the reporter. There's been a terrible misunderstanding." Christina turned, her journalist instincts clearly pinging. "Are you a neighbor?" "I'm Karen Martinez, president of the Willowbrook Circle Homeowners Association." This was news to Marcus as far as he knew. Their small cul-de-sac didn't have a formal HOA, just a loose neighborhood agreement about lawn maintenance. This circus is a violation of multiple community ordinances. What ordinances specifically? Christina asked, gesturing for her cameramen to keep rolling. Karen opened her folder with theatrical precision. Noise violations, parking restrictions, occupancy limits, and ... and she faltered, clearly realizing that having this conversation on camera might not be the strategic victory she'd imagined. "Ma'am," Roberto stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "I have all the necessary permits for this community event. The city approved our application, and Dr. Johnson is graciously hosting us on his private property. But the noise, the disruption..." Karen's voice was climbing toward hysteria. "This is a quiet family neighborhood." "It certainly sounds like a family neighborhood," Christina observed, gesturing toward the kids who were now playing frisbee on Marcus's lawn while their parents chatted with other volunteers. "Very family-friendly, actually." Marcus watched Karen's face cycle through several emotions: frustration, panic, and finally, a desperate calculation. She turned to face the camera directly. "This man," she pointed at Marcus, "has been running an illegal party operation out of his backyard for months. Loud music until all hours, drunk teenagers, complete disregard for his neighbor's peace, and quiet." The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Marcus felt his chest tighten, the familiar surge of anger and grief that Karen's complaints always triggered. But before he could respond, Maya stepped forward. "That's a lie." His daughter's voice was clear and strong, carrying the moral authority that only comes from righteous anger. "Mrs. Martinez, you've been harassing my dad and me for months because we have friends over to swim, because we play music, because we dare to be happy after my mom died." The word "died" seemed to suck all the air out of the conflict. Even the kids stopped playing, sensing the shift in adult energy. Karen's face went pale. I never said anything about you. Literally used my mom's death as a weapon 3 days ago," Maya continued, her voice steady despite the tears Marcus could see forming in her eyes. "You stood on our porch and told my dad that his tragedy didn't give him the right to disturb the neighborhood." Christina's eyebrows shot up. "Is that true, Mrs. Martinez?" Context matters. I was trying to intimidate a grieving family into silence," Roberto said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who dealt with bullies before. "Instead, you inspired Dr. Johnson to open his home to kids who really need this." As if summoned by the conversation, Sophia appeared at Marcus's elbow, still dripping from a quick dip in the pool. "Dr. Johnson, the water's perfect. My little brother's never been in a pool this big. He's crying because he's so happy." Karen stared at Sophia like she was seeing her for the first time. Really seeing her? A kid, maybe 13 years old, with hand-me-down swim gear and a smile that could power the neighborhood. "How many children are here today?" Christina asked. "Marcus, about 60 kids, plus their families and our volunteers," Marcus replied. "We're planning to do this every weekend through the summer, maybe into the fall if the weather holds." 60 children, Christina repeated, then turned to Karen. "Mrs. Martinez, you're opposed to 60 children having access to a swimming pool. That's not how I would put it, ... How would you put it?" Karen opened and closed her mouth. Several times, the weight of having her position examined under the harsh light of television journalism clearly overwhelming her. I just want what's best for the neighborhood." "What's best for whose neighborhood?" The question came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Chen. Herrhausen was walking slowly toward the group, her cane tapping against the sidewalk. "Mrs. Chen?" Karen's voice was small, uncertain. "I've lived here for 37 years, Mrs. Chen said, her accent thick but her words precise. "I raised 4 children in this neighborhood. You know what was best for this neighborhood? When children played outside, when families knew each other, when people helped each other instead of filing complaints." She stopped directly in front of Karen, looking up at the younger woman with eyes that had seen decades of neighborhood dynamics. "You want to know what's disturbing the peace, Karen? It's not children laughing. It's adults who forgot how to be human." The street fell silent except for the distant sound of kids playing in the backyard pool. Karen looked around the circle. Of faces, neighbors, volunteers, children. The news crew seemed to realize that she was completely, utterly The security camera footage would later show the exact moment Karen Martinez's world crumbled. Standing in her pristine front yard at 6:47 a.m., clutching a thick folder of complaints, she watched in horror as the first charter bus rounded the corner, then another and another. By 7:15, her quiet cul-de-sac had transformed into a festival ground, with over 300 strangers streaming toward the Johnsons' backyard pool. What Karen didn't know what would destroy her was that Marcus Johnson had receipts, and he was about to serve them ice cold. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, thick and official, with the HOA letterhead that Marcus Johnson had come to dread. He tore it open while standing in his kitchen, still in his scrubs from the night shift at the hospital, and felt his blood pressure spike as he read the meticulously typed complaint. Violation Notice Number 47B. Excessive noise and disturbance of community peace, filed by Karen Martinez, 1247 Willowbrook Circle. Nature of complaint: repeated instances of loud music, splashing, and general mayhem emanating from the Johnson residence pool area, disturbing the tranquil nature of our family-oriented community. Marcus crumpled the paper, his hands shaking with exhaustion and fury. This was the 7th complaint in 2 months. 7, all from the same woman who lived 3 houses down and seemed to have made monitoring his family's happiness her full-time occupation. Dad, his 15-year-old daughter Maya, peered around the corner, her dark eyes wide with concern. Another letter from Mrs. Martinez. Marcus smoothed out the crumpled notice, scanning the ridiculous list of infractions. Playing music after 8 p.m. on a Saturday. Children laughing excessively loudly during a birthday party. The crime of hosting a barbecue that went past 9:30 p.m. on a Friday night in July. She's claiming we violated the community's standards of peaceful enjoyment, Marcus said, his voice hollow. Maya, when your friends came over last weekend for your birthday pool party, what time did everyone leave? Like 8:30, maybe 9? Maya fidgeted with her phone. Dad, I'm sorry. I know we were being loud, but it was my birthday, and stop. Marcus held up his hand. You have nothing to apologize for. You're 15 years old. You should be able to have friends over to celebrate your birthday without getting legal threats. The truth was, Marcus had bought this house specifically for the pool. After his wife Sarah had died in a car accident 3 years ago, he'd struggled to find ways to help Maya process her grief. The pool had become their sanctuary, a place where Maya could invite friends, where they could host barbecues for their extended family, where the sound of laughter and splashing water helped fill the silence that Sarah's death had left behind. But Karen Martinez had made it her personal mission to end their joy. Marcus walked to his front window and peered across the manicured lawns of Willowbrook Circle. Sure enough, there she was, sharp-featured woman in her early 50s, standing in her doorway with a coffee mug, watching his house like a hawk. When their eyes met through the glass, she raised her mug in a mock toast, a smug smile playing at her lips. His phone buzzed. A text from his neighbor Jim, who lived next door. Dude, Karen's been taking pictures of your pool area again. Saw her with a camera this morning, around 6 a.m. She's escalating. Marcus felt something cold and calculating settle in his chest. He pulled up the HOA complaint form on his laptop and began typing his response, his fingers moving with surgical precision. Across the keyboard, 3 hours later, his doorbell rang. Maya was at school, and Marcus had finally managed to catch a few hours of sleep before his next shift. He opened the door to find Karen Martinez standing on his porch, dressed in a crisp white blouse and khaki pants, holding a leather portfolio. Dr. Johnson, she said, her voice saccharine sweet. I hope you received my formal complaint. I thought we should discuss this like civilized neighbors. Marcus stepped onto his porch, closing the door. Behind him, up close, Karen was smaller than she appeared from a distance, but her eyes held a hardness that spoke of someone who enjoyed wielding power over others. Mrs. Martinez, he said carefully, what exactly would you like to discuss? Well, I think we can resolve this very simply. She opened her portfolio and pulled out a printed document. I've prepared a neighborhood agreement that would establish some reasonable guidelines for pool usage. No music after 7 p.m. on weekdays, 8 p.m. on weekends. No more than 6 guests at a time. No pool parties that extend past sunset. Really very reasonable accommodations for community living. Marcus scanned the document, his jaw tightening with each ridiculous restriction. "These aren't reasonable accommodations, Mrs. Martinez. These are demands that my family live like prisoners in our own home." Karen's smile turned sharp. "Dr. Johnson, I understand you work very hard, and I have tremendous respect for healthcare workers. But your tragedy doesn't give you the right to disturb an entire neighborhood." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. "My tragedy? Your wife's death," Karen said, her tone suddenly clinical. "I understand that you're trying to create joy for your daughter, but your grief doesn't justify disrupting everyone else's peace." For a moment, Marcus couldn't speak. The casual cruelty of using Sarah's death as a weapon in a property dispute left him breathless. "Mrs. Martinez," he said, finally, his voice deadly quiet, "I need you to leave my property. I'm trying to help you avoid a legal battle, Dr. Johnson. The HOA has already voted to fine you $200 for each violation. That's $1,400 you owe currently, with more fines accruing daily until you comply." Marcus looked down at the woman who had made his family's life miserable for months, who had weaponized his grief, who thought she could intimidate him into surrendering the one place where his daughter still smiled freely. "You know what, Mrs. Martinez? You're absolutely right about one thing. Oh, I have been inconsiderate to the neighborhood." Marcus pulled out his phone and opened his contacts. "I've been thinking too small." Karen's confident expression faltered slightly. "What do you mean?" Marcus scrolled through his phone, finding the group chat he'd been added 2 months ago, the one for the Community Recreation Initiative, a nonprofit that connected families with limited resources to recreational activities. He'd volunteered, with him occasionally helping provide medical screenings for their summer programs. "See, I've been hosting small gatherings, 10 or 15 people max, but you've made me realize that's selfish." He began typing rapidly. "Why shouldn't the entire community have access to a pool, especially underprivileged kids who don't get to swim otherwise? Dr. Johnson, what are you? Did you know there are over 200 kids in the surrounding neighborhoods who don't have pool access? Kids who take 3 buses to get to the public pool that's only open 4 hours a day." Karen's face had gone pale. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm dead serious." Marcus hit send on his message, then looked up at Karen with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You want to talk about community standards? Let's talk about real community service." His phone immediately buzzed with a response from Roberto Marcus. "Are you sure this would be amazing for the kids? When can we start?" "You're making a mistake," Karen said, backing toward her car. "The HOA will never prevent me from hosting community service events on my private property," Marcus interrupted. "I checked 3 different lawyers confirmed it. Something about constitutional rights and community service protections." Which was true. Marcus had spent his sleepless hours after the last complaint researching every angle. Consulting with legal aid attorneys who worked with the hospital's charity programs, Karen's portfolio clutched to her chest. She stared at him with something approaching panic. "Dr. Johnson, please, we can work something out. Maybe we can compromise on the music volume. Or you know what would have worked, Mrs. Martinez?" Marcus stepped closer, his voice carrying the authority he used in the emergency room when dealing with difficult patients. "If you had knocked on my door 8 months ago and said, 'Hey, my husband works nights, and the pool noise bothers him during his sleep hours. Could we figure out a schedule that works for everyone?' that would have worked. Instead, you decided to wage a campaign of harassment against a widower and his teenage daughter. You filed false noise complaints, took photographs of my property without permission. And just now you stood on my porch and used my wife's death as leverage in a property dispute." Karen's face crumpled, but Marcus felt no satisfaction in her distress. "So here's what's going to happen," he continued. "Starting this Saturday, my pool is going to become a community resource. Every weekend, sometimes weekdays too. Kids from 3 different neighborhoods are going to come swim, play, laugh, and be loud. Very, very loud." His phone buzzed again. Roberto had sent a photo of kids at their community center. With the message, "They're so excited, they're literally jumping up and down. Can we do this Saturday?" Marcus showed Karen the photo. "Look at those faces, Mrs. Martinez. Those are kids who are about to have the best summer of their lives. Thanks to your complaints, this is revenge," Karen stammered. "No," Marcus said quietly. "This is community service. This is what good neighbors do for each other. They share resources with people who need them. Karen turned and